Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. One of those matchups that, we've had circled since early January. Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame, heading on the road to play Texas A&M. Now, we've talked about this game from just about every angle you could talk about it. That being said, we've all kind of come to the same conclusion, and that is these are two defenses that we think are going to be some of the better units in the country going up against the offenses that I think we all have question marks about heading into 2024. And so, what defense is better in this matchup? That's kind of what I want to get into. Want to go position group by position group and kind of stack these defenses and say, hey, if this is going to be a defense centered football game, which team has the better defense? Really excited to get into it. Now, before we do, and as always, light it up in the comment section. I'm going to give you guys my answer at the end, but we're going to kind of go step by step in terms of evaluating defenses. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. I know there's going to be a lot of people that agree with me, that disagree with me. That's kind of the beauty of doing these kind of episodes. So let it fly in the comment section. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with one of my overall takes I have on both of these defenses, where I look at Notre Dame and I say, where's the hole? Where's the question mark in this Notre Dame defense? And I think the short answer is there's not really a hole, right? You look at that front seven, top 10 unit in the country. You look at the secondary, probably a top 5 unit in the country. Now, how does that stack up against Texas A&M? I'd probably argue that Texas A&M might have the better star power. Like, if you ask me who is the best football player on the defensive side of the football with both of these teams, I'm probably answering Nick Gordon, the Purdue transfer. And I think they have guys like Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart, potentially Cassius Howell, Torian York. I think they have some real difference makers that Notre Dame certainly has too, and we're going to talk about them. Like, Howard Cross might be one of the more underrated interior defensive linemen that you see in the country, but I think there's an argument to be made that Texas A&M might have the better star power. Notre Dame might have the more complete defense. Now, the interesting conversation is, all right, what defense are we taking? Let's go position group by position group. Start with the defensive line. And you look at this defense specifically stopping the run. When you look at Texas A&M, I think the biggest question mark is, how are they going to replace a guy like McKinley Jackson? Now, I think I favor Texas A&M in the pass rush against Notre Dame, but I might lean Notre Dame right now heading into Saturday against the run, because you look at Howard Cross, 29 run stops last year. Riley Mills, 23 run stops last year. This is a defense in Notre Dame that on the inside, these kids are fire hydrants. You look at Howard Cross, 6'2", 295, just doesn't get moved off the line of scrimmage, is exceptional at getting off blocks and making plays around the line of scrimmage. From a run stopping standpoint, with the absence of McKinley Jackson, I probably would lean Notre Dame in terms of stopping the run. And then the conversation goes, all right, in the pass rush, who are you taking? I think we're taking Texas A&M. You look at Nick Gordon, one of, if not the best edge rusher, not in the SEC, but in the country. Heading into 2024, you take a look at the numbers, led the Big Ten in sacks last year at Purdue, 28 quarterback hurries. You sprinkle in Shamar Turner, you sprinkle in Shamar Stewart, you sprinkle in Cassius Howell, who I think is going to surprise a lot of people on Saturday night. You probably like the pass rush unit more. But again, you look at Notre Dame and say, Howard Cross had 31 quarterback hurries. Riley Mills had 20. RJ Open coming from Duke. That is an edge rusher that can get after the passer. Like, I think Notre Dame's pass rush is probably top 10 in the country. But I don't know if I'm taking a single program in the country over Texas A&M in the pass rush department. So I think one of the conversations is, when you're picking this defensive front, do you want a defensive line that's better stopping the run or better getting after the passer? Now, you look at Texas A&M, I think that is, if you are picking Texas A&M in this football game, you're kind of looking at this Texas A&M pass rush against the Notre Dame offensive line that is going to be starting a true freshman at left tackle. If you're picking Notre Dame, you're probably saying, hey, we know Texas A&M probably can't push the ball down the field on us on a regular basis. We feel really good about stopping the run against Texas A&M. And so that kind of gets into some of those conversations in terms of how you evaluate and pick this football game. Going back to the linebacker room, you got two studs, right? Jack Kaiser at Notre Dame, Torian York at Texas A&M. Jack Kaiser's played a ton of football, only missed 5% of his tackles last year. Jack Kaiser flying at least in my mind, is significantly under the radar. And then you start sprinkling in some of the young talent, right? Drake Bowen, Kingston Viliamu-Assad, Jalen Sneed at that, kind of rover position. Jalen Sneed was a top 50 national prospect. We haven't seen a ton of Jalen Sneed, but I think there's a lot of quiet confidence in the Notre Dame program that Jalen Sneed is going to be a really good football player. You look at Texas A&M and say, hey, we feel great about Torrey Nork. You take a look at Torrey Nork as a true freshman. We've talked about this kid a lot. 33 run stops with an average depth of tackle of 2.2 yards down the field. And Torrey Nork as a true freshman displayed not only really solid athleticism, but the instincts that this kid brings to the table at that off-ball linebacker spot. It is, in my mind, special. And if he wasn't playing next to Edgerrin Cooper, he probably would have been even making more tackles for Texas A&M in the 2023 season. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame at the linebacker position because I have question marks about who the running mate is going to be for Texas A&M, because you haven't really seen a guy really emerge. There's a lot of buzz around Damian Sanford. There's a lot of buzz around Solomon DeShields or Scooby Williams. You're not really sure who it's going to be. Where you look at Notre Dame and say, hey, we know Jack Kaiser, is a dude. Drake Bowen, feel really good about him. Kingston Viliamu-Assad, feel really good about him. I look at Notre Dame and say there's just a couple more pieces that I feel better about. Then you look at the back end. I think this is probably the most obvious answer we have, Notre Dame, in terms of you look at Notre Dame secondary, say when you have one of the best cornerbacks in the country in Benjamin Morrison, it gets really easy to play defense in the secondary. You combine that with a ball-hawking safety in Xavier Watts, with a guy like Jordan Clark coming from Arizona State, who I think is a phenomenal nickel corner. And then you look at Texas A&M and say, we love the talent that's in the back end for Texas A&M. It's a lot of guys, a lot of new faces. We're not really sure what it's going to look like in terms of who's going to start, who's going to play the most amount of snaps. We feel pretty good about the floor of Texas A&M secondary, but it's hard to sit here heading into 2024 and not take Notre Dame secondary. And so then the conversation is, what defense would you rather have? And I think this is a fascinating conversation because on paper right now, I probably lean Notre Dame, but in this football game, night game, College Station, specifically Texas A&M's matchup, you almost like Texas A&M's matchup a little bit more because you look at that Notre Dame offensive line with the significant question marks we have and say, you kind of think Texas A&M's defensive line can really take over this football game, specifically in the pass rush, right? I think it's one of the best pass rush units we see in the country. And then you combine that with significant question marks on Notre Dame's offensive line, specifically in the pass protection department. I'm taking Notre Dame's defense overall. If you told me right now, pick a defense to go play 12, 13 games with, you'll probably take Notre Dame because I think it's overall more complete. But in this football game, I don't blame people for taking Texas A&M's defense because it's probably the biggest mismatch that we see on the football field. Fascinating football game. We're going to break it down live after it happens. Wanted to hop on and kind of talk about how I evaluate these defenses specifically in this football game. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.